Jackie Harris. I'm Executive Director and founder of the Satchmo Armstrong Summer Jazz Camp. I also serve as Executive Director of the New Orleans Arts and Cultural Host Committee, the organization that presents the Jazz Camp. The mission of Jazz Camp is to offer quality music education to any student, primarily in New Orleans, but any student anywhere in the world that's interested in learning jazz music in the city it was created. Well, the camp was started in 1995. I became director of the Music and Entertainment Commission of New Orleans in 1994. And while meeting with Mayor Morial, we were talking about what direction, we felt the commission should go in, and also what kind of programming we would want to institute for the citizens in the city of New Orleans. And we both realized that New Orleans is known as the Mecca of jazz performance. And so if we were the Mecca of jazz performance and we were putting out all of these great musicians, well, we felt too that people should be traveling to New Orleans, young music students, to learn the music. I mean, it was created here. Then we started looking around, and the schools at that time had really, out of need, had to take most of their budgeting money out of arts education, and so there was very little music education in schools. So we felt we should do something about that, and that's how the Louis Armstrong Jazz Camp came about. And as I was looking for a name for the camp, my counterpart, Kimberly Carbo, was then director of the Film and Video Commission. So she says, well, Jackie, why don't you call it the Louis Armstrong Jazz Camp? And that's really how the name came about. The Louis Armstrong Educational Foundation is one of the biggest supporters and sponsors of the Jazz Camp. Actually, they've made a consistent commitment to support the Jazz Camp. For the most part, annually, they give the largest grant to the program. Of course, we've gotten larger grants, but not on an ongoing basis. We've got like an annual allocation from someone that's been larger. But Phoebe Jacobs is the largest cheerleader for Jazz Camp, Louis Armstrong, and New Orleans you'll ever find. And Phoebe is Executive Vice President of the foundation. Of course, we use music education and jazz education as a means toward an end of preserving the legacy of New Orleans. But in Jazz Camp, we mentor, and I'm talking about individual mentorship of each of those students. We're not just producing good musicians or supporters of jazz music, but we work on the whole child, to coin the phrase from Kid Jordan, the artistic director. We want them to be good citizens. We work on that. We have very strong discipline within the camp. We have a zero tolerance level for misbehavior. And there are certain things that kids must do to and have done to be accepted into the program and to continue into the program. Now, we know all of them will not become jazz musicians. We don't expect them to be, but we expect them to be respectful of their elders and of their peers. And we know that any child that is involved in a arts education program does well in other areas of study, so that's very important to us. Brian Gazer, the bass instructor, He is the son of Wardell Gazaire. Well, I guess the camp is 15 years old, and Brian has been there for 15 years. He was in the first jazz camp class. He was an intern in the program. He got his college degree in teaching, and now he's a teacher in the program. Calvin Johnson, who is a college student who now his original major was music. He's going into finance too, so he's a double threat because he's going to be a financial consultant and musician. He's now an assistant instructor in the program. Former Loyola student Gregory Ajit, who just graduated this year from Loyola, he is now going to teach in the KIPP charter school system. He's an assistant instructor. He told us that he and his parents had moved to New Orleans, and the second day that he had moved to New Orleans, he auditioned to be in jazz camp. And Gregory, I think, is like a 5 or 6 year student. He completed his college degree. He's an assistant instructor now, working, teaching in New Orleans public schools. Courtney Bryant, who is now working on her PhD at Columbia College. She was classically trained, had had no relationship to jazz music, saw a flyer at her high school on the bulletin board and thought that maybe learning jazz might be cool, so she decided to enroll in the program. She was a 5 or 6 year student. Now she's getting her PhD. She's an assistant instructor. She works in music composition with Roger Dickerson. And that is what, the New Orleans music tradition is all about, is passing it on to the next generation. And so we are passing it on in a more structured and a non-structured situation. Well, students must be between the ages of 10 and 21 years old. They must be actively involved in the music education program, which means they can be studying music in school or they can take private instruction. New students must pass an audition and an interview. We expect them to know their scales and to have some relationship with their instrument. Mr. Jordan auditions all of the students, and we ask them why do they want to be in jazz camp. Sometimes, and let me say, is when this audition is conducted, the parents are not in the room. So it's up to the child to tell us why he or she wants to be in the program, and they must meet those requirements. Also, while in jazz camp, we ask each student to practice at least 2 hours a night. Well, of course, we know everybody's not practicing for 2 hours, but they have to practice at least an hour or 30 minutes each night, because the teacher knows if the student is not putting any time into his lessons. That student, we don't put them out for not practicing. We keep them in the program, and we try to encourage them to practice. We try to work with them in the classroom to see, and they can see themselves the results that comes from a student that's really serious and really applying themselves to those who are not. I mean, some kids, the light does not go on the first year. It takes a couple of years for them to really get serious about it. And then some really decide that playing an instrument is not what they want to do. But then they find that out, and the parents does as well. And then they can look to something else, maybe visual arts or, of science or math programs. Well, we teach all of the, and how to put it in the capsule, I usually say we teach all of the jazz instruments except the violin. So we have two classes of brass instruments, which includes the trombone and trumpet. We have, like, I guess you would say a senior class and an intermediate class. We have two sections of woodwinds, and we have an individual flute class, and we teach the saxophones as well, the clarinet, the guitar, bass, piano, drums. We teach the drum kit, and we also teach percussions. We have what's called the beginner's horns class, which Kid Jordan teaches that class, and that's all of the horn players. And there's more attention given to scales and how to approach the instrument, counting out, and just learning the fundamentals of music education. And let me say that our program is really focused on learning the fundamentals of music, which allows a child to go into any genre of music that they choose to. We also teach vocal music, and we teach music composition as well. Young people who are interested in arranging and are writing their own music get instruction from Roger Dickerson, who is a classical music composer. We also have dance, which is taught by Norma Miller, the Queen of Swing, and a New York dancer and choreographer, Mickey Davidson. And what both Norma and Mickey says to us that there's a difference in teaching dance to a musician. And what is really unique about it is that they hear the music in a different way than a non-musician does. They know where the breaks are, they anticipate them, and so they're able to really move with the music, and they really enjoy doing that. The vocal component is taught by Jermaine Basil, New Orleans. I think that she's got her own name, which she's been coined for, but she's an excellent teacher, and she teaches vocal music. The kids perform in a choral setting. They are learning the jazz standards and jazz greats. They've sung in Portuguese this year. They had the opportunity to sing some songs in Spanish. Year before last, we had George Duke in as the artist in residence, and he's done some compositions in Portuguese, and the kids sung one of his tunes in that language. I am biased. I will start off by saying that. But we have the best instructors in the world. I mean, these people are renowned musicians in their own right, and they are musician educators who have given their whole lives to teaching music to students. Kid Jordan is the artistic director, and we call him the dean of avant-garde music, and many people ask me, well, how is it that Kid is teaching these kids the fundamentals and traditional jazz music, and he's written a couple of compositions for the young students, and he's such an avant-gardist. I mean, he's just a way out cat in his music. And I say to him, well, first off, he has a love for what he's doing. He loves to see the children learn, and he plants he's looking at it as he's planting a seed. And it's amazing how he can really move a young student from coming in hardly being able, they're so nervous when they're in his classroom, but you can see how the kids develop. Um, uh, Darryl Levine teaches piano, he and Peter Cho. Peter Cho now just received his PhD. He heads, I think, the music department at Delgado Community College. Kent Jordan, he heads the Jazz Studies program at Lusher Charter School. Jonathan Bloom, who is a coordinator for the Monk Institute, and a longtime music educator in the Orleans Parish Schools. He's the camp coordinator and he teaches percussions. Herman Jackson, the drum instructor, he teaches music at Southern University in Baton Rouge. Jermaine Basil just retired from Xavier Prep. She was the vocal and choral music teacher there. Roger Dickerson, who I mentioned before, is a classical jazz composer. He worked with Terence Blanchard, Wynton, Branford, Nicholas Payton. Clyde Kerr Jr., who comes from a legacy of his father, Clyde Kerr Sr., who was one of the greatest arrangers of big band music in New Orleans. Clyde taught at NOCA. You know, he's retired now. I mean, we can go on and on. As I mentioned, Norma Miller is the queen of jazz and the Savoy Ballroom. I mean, she's also a musician. I mean, she's a comedian. We've got so many great teachers, and they all are responsible for having taught the greats of New Orleans music that are really young, and there some older students. Alvin Batiste was the late Alvin Batiste was a former instructor and founding instructor in the jazz camp. When we planned his wake and his funeral, we had generations of artists that he had touched that started off with Wynton and Branford and those musicians, you know, down to Nicholas, Irvin Mayfield, those artists, and are now at Joe Dyson, Gregory Ajid, Max. You know, you can't talk. That's what New Orleans music is about. We've had, I mean, very good results from our artist in residence program. The first artist in residence was Cecil Taylor, who is an avant-garde jazz piano player, and people would never have expected Cecil to be an artist in residence at the Armstrong Jazz Camp, because for the most part, when people think New Orleans, they think traditional jazz music. But that is not what jazz camp is just about. It's about teaching kids trad. It's about teaching them avant-garde music. It's about teaching them bebop, and that's what we teach them. Wynton Marsalis has been an artist in residence. Barry Harris, Chico Hamilton, Herlin Riley, Hammond Blewett, William Parker, John Faddis, Clark Terry, George Duke, Candido, Bobby Sanabria. I mean, it's been many, many artists. I mean, in 15 years, we've had 15 artists in residence. You know, and we've had a few locals as well. As I mentioned, Herlin Riley. We've had Nicholas Payton, who was there a year before last. Donald Harrison has, you know, been there. You know, and we're looking at bringing in, well, it was quite interesting because last year with Candido and Bobby Sanabria, we exposed our children to something they had never been exposed to, and that was the rhythms of Cuban and Latin jazz music. And so Bobby Sanabria is such the historian, so he knew the history of Cuba, New Orleans, Puerto Rico, and also he showed the kids the correlations between and the likenesses and the brass band beat and Cuban rhythms and Cuban music, and they could hear that. And it was really, it was quite interesting and very exciting. And we thought that, and we did that for the 15th anniversary because we felt we should do something different, and that's what we did. And this upcoming year, we're going to go back to a straight ahead jazz artist. And then the year after that, we're going to do something innovative. I think that the kids should see that the roots of music are in jazz music, but the other genres and the other styles of music came out of what was created in New Orleans. Well, let me tell you, the hardest thing is raising the money, and especially in this day and time in our country's history, and you know what's going on financially. You know, I write as many grants as we can afford to write. We are always looking for potential sponsors and supporters. This year, I have to say that everybody stepped up to help, even the parents. They supported some of the programs. Phoebe Jacobs and the Armstrong Educational Foundation has really helped us to really seek out other sponsors. And let me say, Wynton Marsalis has really been a godsend. I mean, for 2 years in a row, he's really helped us a lot, and that's not what they do at Jazz at Lincoln Center, you know, but they really helped us. Entergy, you know, really stepped up. This year was the first year we had a presenting sponsor for the culminating concert. We've had many local nonprofit philanthropic organizations and companies have really helped to keep the program going. As soon as camp is over, we have to start fundraising for the upcoming year. And we really hope and are really appreciative that people see the importance of keeping this program going, because the summer is a very, very serious time for young people. We've got to keep them busy. We have to keep them involved in constructive things. Also, the kids that attend this program, when they start school the upcoming year, they are going to be more advanced than the kids that were not involved in the music education summer program. And we've had lots and lots of comments from music teachers in the different schools telling us how advanced and how much more prepared their students are after they've attended jazz camp. Well, as I mentioned, let me say we've grown, and that's, I think, the thing that's kept us going, and that's what really projects how well you're doing. I think the things that really points that out is, number one, we have a very high return rate. Our return rate is up at about 60% or better of students. Our curriculum has really expanded in the past 15 years. We are also, as we talked about the artist in residence, we think that it's very important that not just the program growing in the number of students we take in, or but we really have to move with the times. And you know, music is changing, and the business of music is changing. And we feel that we must prepare our students for that. And so wherever the industry is going, and how the music is evolving, that's how Jazz Camp is evolving. And so we are looking to what the industry needs and wants, and what the children need and want, to prepare them to be in the 21st century as a musician, as a music industry professional, or as a citizen who's contributing to his community. And that's the direction we're going in. Let me say this too. I think What Jazz Camp has really done too for local schools is, in a lot of instances, they have used the program to recruit students from us. Before NOCA really expanded its program, and then many times they recommend that students enroll in Jazz Camp to help them for the upcoming school year. They have in the past used the Jazz Camp as a means to recruit students into the program. I think that the music community in New Orleans has to become a family. I think that all of the summer programs that exist in the city, that we should work together. We are looking at ways in which we can. Some of the other summer programs that take in beginning students, they recommend students for us. They send us students, and we do everything we can to make sure those kids come into the are able to come into the program. And what's most important for us is keeping the fees affordable so that any child that has an interest in coming to the Armstrong Jazz Camp can do so. If you're interested in visiting the Lewis, Satchmo, or Armstrong Summer Jazz Camp, we would love to have you visit us at www.lewisarmstrongjazzcamp.com, and please take advantage of early registration.